It's district breakdown time. I got my guy, Professor Diggs. We are talking 4-6A, and we are talking the South Lake, Byron Nelson, and Keller schools, plus Haltom and Eaton. Why did I even bother even starting doing that? I might as well name every single team if I'm going to do it like that. But anyway, last year was South Lake Carroll, but the team of that district was Byron Nelson. Everybody was talking about because of their offensive numbers they put up there. But man, I think a lot of that team has gone on to college and graduated and done other things. So tell me who we need to look out for in 4-6A, Diggsy.
Well, I mean, we talk about Ric Flair theory, and we talked about it significantly on the podcast, last year when we were talking about the Byron Nelson and South Lake Carroll. Is it going to be Carroll? And when Carroll played Byron Nelson, they certainly took him out to the woodshed and took him to task. I think this district absolutely still goes through South Lake Carroll. When you really dig into South Lake Carroll's roster and what they've got coming back, it could be a very special team. I mean, they don't have that one player, that you look at, the Owen Allen, who's going to be setting records this year, but almost everybody on this team is, potentially looking at a D1, D2, D3 kind of a scholarship. Graham Knowles, the quarterback, who's going to be a senior. I mean, obviously a talented guy. He's got all of the measurables. Jack Van Dorselier just looks the part as far as that goes. And you have Harrison Moore as well, who also looks the part. These are both tight ends, but can also both play on the line. Might see defensive sides of the ball. Very versatile, both 6'5", 230, 240. I mean, that's bigger than a lot of your commander players out there, Ward. I mean, they got some size over there at Carroll. We know we talked about the transfer with Riley Wormley, who's going to give them that running back presence. They've got one of my favorite names of a player, Ward. You got Carter High, the cornerback for South Lake Carroll. Love that name. He's coming back. Uh, Carroll just looks like a complete team offensively and defensively. And when we start to kind of go down the district breakdown and look at some of the other teams, you see some really good pockets of talent. But Carroll, for me, both sides of the ball, and Riley Dodge in the system. We talk about systems. I think this year for Byron Nelson is going to be the year that we're going to start to determine, have they created a system? Have they started to show that consistency to where we can kind of put some stock and invest in Byron Nelson? Because was last year a one-hit wonder, or are we going to start to see a little bit more out of them? Carroll, we know what we're going to get. We know they're going to have a high level of performance all year. And I think that they have depending on if they go D1 or D2, they have a really good chance to go regional finals or maybe to the state semifinals this year.
Wow, that's a good squad. And the team, there's always a team when I sit back after DFW season, I sit back and I say, man, this team had a great season, but nobody really gave them one flower, hardly any flowers. And to me, that team was Keller. I mean, we don't even talk about Keller, but Keller gave South Lake Carroll the closest game in regular season. Now, granted, they got stomped by Byron Nelson the following week, but they did go further than they've gone since 1960 something or other in the playoffs. And Coach Strelo tells me he's got 6-7 offensive linemen coming back, and that's I do those media day segments, and all of the coaches tell me, well, we got to figure out what to do with this offensive line. Well, he's got that. Granted, he's losing his quarterback, but he still has Trey Griffiths coming back at receiver. Talk to me about Keller, and do you think they can hop Byron Nelson? Maybe compare the two of them.
I love how you set that up, because you just gave a glowing appeal of Keller and what we can expect from them, and how last year they had one of their best seasons ever. And we kind of started them out. I started them out in the spring rankings at the number 3 team in this district. But now that I've kind of evaluated things, I'm actually lowering them a bit. So you just gave them all these flowers, and I'm going to bump Northwest Eaton over them after seeing the 7-on-7. But that's truly not an indictment on Keller. I think that this district could be 4 strong. I just think Northwest Eaton, with everything that what they've shown in 7-on-7, is really good. But we'll talk about Northwest Eaton. But you brought up Keller, and you talked about Tex Mahan and that offensive line, and Trey Griffiths. Cameron Rayford is a really good running back, so I think they're going to have that durable running back that is really a big part of what Keller does. Quarterback for me, we talked about how Carroll's got that complete team. I got to see what Keller's going to have at quarterback, and really kind of the infrastructure of their defense all has to be replaced. So Keller defensively, when I'm seeing the matchups against Northwest Eaton and how offensively powerful Northwest Eaton is looking to be, especially from what we're seeing on 7-on-7, I'm very skeptical about that Northwest Eaton Keller game 1-on-1. But Keller has a really good chance to go 3 deep again, depending on how their playoff road sets up. And I like Keller. I think we may keep him top 25, even though I really like Northwest Eaton. But Ward, Noah Lugo is that player this year who has just kind of come from obscurity and has completely taken us in 7-on-7 and said, this is a kid we need to watch. And you talked about receivers for days, and we'll still talk about Byron Nelson. I still think Byron Nelson is the number 2 team in this district, but Northwest Eaton has 3 really good receivers. They've got a D1 quarterback. They are setting up to be that Byron Nelson offensively that we saw last year. Talon Holmes, Mason Stubb, and Karsten Robinson, all really good receivers for Northwest Eaton. I'm very excited about this team offensively, but their question is going to be on defense. Whereas with Byron Nelson, I think their defense may be the best in this district, but what's going to happen offensively? We talked about the receivers for days last year. We talked about how they really just had that offensive breakthrough and their quarterback. They got to address all of those things. But defensively, I know the media day you talked about it. David Kabongo committed to Oklahoma State in the last couple of days and weeks. Ashton Williams, a really talented linebacker, is coming back for Byron Nelson. And then on the offensive side of the ball, Thomas Von Groot is who I've kind of pegged in as the starter. Now, I know Coach Pride over there doesn't like me saying, okay, this is going to be your starting quarterback. But I think he's a talented kid, has a really good chance to shine and step in. I really think that this district, in the past, it's been kind of, well, Carroll and everybody else. I think we have a very top-heavy district with some very talented teams who could potentially make some playoff runs. And when we're looking at what we talked about last week with 3-6A, got North Crowley, and then, what's going to come out. This district has a really good chance to win 3 of those playoff games in the 3-6A versus 4-6A. And North Crowley is going to get a heck of a first round test as well with these top 4 teams in this district.
Let's talk about the bottom 4 of those teams. You got Timber Creek and Fossil Ridge, Central, and Halton. What do you got out of those 4?
I really like Fossil Ridge. I think Fossil Ridge has a good chance, but when you get Keller and Fossil Ridge, those 2 teams play. You can throw out the records, and it's like Flower Mound and Flower Mound Marcus. And if Keller is going to end up being number 4, they're just 1 game away. That puts them in a very vulnerable position. Again, with Fossil Ridge, they've got Logan Cundiff coming back and 2 really good receivers, but the defensive side of the ball and the offensive line, kind of have some questions there. Timber Creek, they've got some really talented players and spots, but they have absolutely no depth. Anderson Lewis is a pretty talented quarterback coming back, and Devin Green is a really good player. For Keller Central, I think they're going to be at the bottom of the district again with Haltom. Weston Underhill is a good player to kind of keep an eye on there as well for Keller Central. Haltom, I think it's going to be a little bit of a struggle for Haltom this year. They just graduated everybody, but a player to kind of keep an eye on. Devin Ramirez Powell might be a player who can get some good yardage for at running back for Haltom. I think he could be a talented player, but everybody else, Haltom, it was just a few years ago that Haltom was that team with Euless Trinity, and they've kind of taken a few steps back. In this district, the way it's grown hasn't done them any favors. I think they're going to be looking at realignment in this next cycle and say, hey, maybe you can move us a little bit more west. We fit a little bit better with that crew.
So throw me a top 1 through 8.
Got South Lake Carroll number 1, Byron Nelson number 2, Northwest Eaton number 3. Sorry, Keller, bumped you to 4 because of Northwest Eaton's performances in 7-on-7 this year. Fossil Ridge 5, Timber Creek 6, Keller Central 7, and Haltom rounding it out at number 8.
Well, should be a deep playoff run for some of these teams, and I'm looking forward to it. And we will talk 5-6A when we come back next week.
I know everything you talked about last week, you made me cut up the script and throw it away, and we'll talk more about that next week.
Start from scratch. We'll see you.